Hi everyone, in today's lesson we will discuss another topic from object-oriented system design or development subject, and the topic is object-oriented methodologies. So before coming to this topic, I just want to tell you guys that if you guys have not seen my last lesson where I have discussed everything about component-based development and a rapid application development process, and if you guys have not seen that lesson, then I would recommend you guys to watch that lesson as well. And if you guys have not subscribed this channel yet, then subscribe it, watch this lesson completely, and if you like this lesson, then don't forget to click on the like button. Okay, so now let us start our discussion on this topic of object-oriented methodologies. Okay, so object-oriented methodologies allows users to execute good analysis and design prior the development. Okay, so whenever we want to develop a software application, we cannot start directly development phase. We have to first start the analysis and then we have to prepare the design. So what this object-oriented methodology is saying is, if you uses the concept of objects while analyzing the system as well as designing the system, then surely you will be going to create a better and good system. Because if you analyze the system using the objects, then it would be easier for you to understand the problem. Then you can relate with the real world, because in object-oriented approach we will be dealing with the real world objects, and that will help you to understand the problem in a better manner. So we have various methodologies in object-oriented way of designing the system, and here I have written down these various methodologies. So now let us see one by one. Okay, so now the first methodology is Rumbaugh object modeling technique, and the second one is the Booch methodology, and the last one is the Jacobson's methodology. Okay, so these are the different scientists who have made their research, and based on their experience they come up that if you use the object-oriented way of analyzing and designing the system, then it's possible that you will come up with the better system. And these three scientists will have their own point of view on this object-oriented development. Okay, one of the scientists will be telling that data flow diagram and use case diagram will be good enough for you to design a better system. Okay, and another scientist will be telling you that class diagram or activity diagram would be better option for you to analyze and design the system. So like this, each and every scientist will be having their own point of view, and that point of view will be based on their experience and based on their research. Okay, so now we will be going to discuss what are the modeling technique of each and every of these scientists. Okay, one by one. So now first we will start our discussion on object-oriented methodologies by studying the technique which has been done by this scientist whose name is Rumbaugh, and the name of the methodology or the technique of the scientist is Rumbaugh object modeling technique. Okay, now let us start our discussion with the first object-oriented methodology suggested by Rumbaugh, and the name of that methodology is Rumbaugh object modeling technique. Okay, so now let us see the first point. Object modeling technique is an object modeling language for software modeling and designing. Okay, so similar to any other language like C, Java, where we have various concepts like data type, functions, variables, okay, and we have operators, keywords. Exactly the same way we have various concepts in this object modeling techniques as well, like we have the concepts of attributes. Okay, we have the concepts of relationship, inheritance, data flow diagrams, class diagrams, activity diagrams, transition diagrams, sequence diagrams. Okay, all this makes this object modeling technique is a language, and with the help of this object modeling language we can analyze and design, and we can model the software applications. Okay, so now the next point is, it is developed in 1991 by James Rumbaugh as a method to develop object-oriented systems and to support object-oriented programming. Yes, it has been developed in 1991 by this scientist called as James Rumbaugh to support the object-oriented development approach and to encourage the development of object-oriented programming. Now let us see the next point. Object modeling technique describes methods for analysis, design and implementation of a system using object-oriented techniques. Okay, so now this object modeling technique provides various methods for developers and the development team for analyzing and designing an object-oriented system using various object-oriented techniques. Okay, so this object modeling technique is helping the developers to analyze the system using various concepts like data flow diagrams, like relationships, okay, and then class diagrams, activity diagrams. So all these methods, all these object-oriented techniques are helping the designers or analysts to design or analyze a better system using object-oriented techniques. Now we will see the next point. Object modeling technique is fast and easy to understand approach for identifying and modeling all the objects making up the system. Okay, so this object modeling technique is fast and easy to understand, and this approach helps the designers and developers to identify the objects making up the system. Okay, in a system development, identifying objects, the process of identifying the objects is a tricky task or a difficult task. It requires a lot of experience and knowledge. It requires the detailed knowledge of the entire domain. But this object modeling technique will help the designers and developers to identify the objects. And once the objects are identified, then they can design, then they can model a system using those objects, and then they will combine those various objects to make up the system. Okay, so first step is to identify the objects. And once the objects are identified, then they will be making a model of that system with the help of those objects, and then they will combine those various objects to make up a large system. And object modeling technique helps the designers to perform all this task in a better manner with a faster pace. Now the next point is features like attributes, methods, inheritance and associations can be expressed easily using object modeling technique. Yes, with the object modeling technique, since we will be dealing with real world objects in object oriented methodologies, we will be dealing with the real world objects and we will be knowing about those objects. So we will be knowing various attributes of those objects. We will be knowing what are the operations needs to be performed on those objects, and we will be knowing the inheritance concepts on those objects, and we will be knowing the associations on those objects. How we know all these things about the objects? Because the objects which we are taking in the system development, we are relating these objects to the real world entities or real world objects. So since we are relating these things to the real world objects, so we will be knowing most of the things about those objects, and now it becomes easier for us to find out the attributes, methods and relationship with other objects. Okay, and all these things can be expressed easily using object modeling technique. Okay, next point is this model lets you specify detailed state transitions and their description within the system. Yes, this object modeling technique also helps the designers to design a detailed state transition diagrams. State transition diagrams shows you the complete details of each and every transitions taking place during the various operations of the system. Whenever user started using the system, then user will be performing various operations on the system. Based on those operations, the transitions will take place. User will be moving from one state to another state, and with the state, the transition will take place. Okay, and this object modeling technique will help us to prepare the detailed transition diagram of that system. And with that transition diagram, we will clearly understand the flow of the system between the user and the system. So now this object modeling technique will help us to prepare or make a detailed state transition and their descriptions within the system. Yes, we can easily make the state transition diagrams and we can get the information or description about the system. Now the next point is object modeling technique operates modeling on three different parts. Okay, so there are three parts of object modeling technique, and those three parts are, first one is object modeling, second one is dynamic modeling, and then third one is functional modeling. Okay, so we will see each and every of these modelings. And now we will see one of the type of object modeling technique, and that is object model. Okay, so now this object model, it describes structure of objects in a system, their identity, their relationship to other objects, attributes and operations. Okay, so this object model describes entire structure of an object. What is the name of the object, what are their attributes, and how this object is connected or related with other object, what is the relationship between this object with the other object. Okay, so that's what you can see here in this diagram. So here we have three objects: customer object, account object and transaction object, and each and every object has their own attributes and they have their own functions as well. So that's what it's seeing in this point. It describes the complete structure. So here with this diagram we are demonstrating the entire structure of model, where they are demonstrating their identity, which is the name of the object, where they are demonstrating their relationship with other objects. See, here we are representing the relationship with other objects, and attributes, these are the attributes, these are the attributes, and also we are demonstrating the functions: deposit function, withdraw function, transaction, which can be done on the account. Okay, now the next point, represented graphically with an object diagram. Yes, the relationship between various objects, their identities, the names of their attributes, okay, their interconnection between the objects will be represented in a better manner with the help of this object diagram. Now object diagram contains classes interconnected by association lines. Okay, so now all these are the classes. We can call this customer as a class, we can call account as a class, we can call transaction as a class, we can call each and every of these objects as a class, and each and every of these classes are interconnected with the association lines, which you can see here. Okay, and then each class represent a set of individual object. Yes, this each and every class, whether it is customer or account or transaction, each and every of this class is considered as an individual object. And association lines establishes relationship between classes. Yes, these association lines represents the relationship between this object with this another object. So now you can see this customer is having a field called as account number, and this account number field is present in this class as well, and we have the account number field present in this transaction class as well. Okay, so this fields, common field, will help us to make the relationship between various objects. Okay, now this is everything about the first type of the object modeling technique, which is the object model, and now we will see the next part of the object modeling technique, which is the dynamic model. Now we will see the second part of object modeling technique, which is the dynamic model. So this dynamic model represents the states, transitions, events and actions taken care between the various objects. Okay, so whenever we analyze and design a system, so at that time we also need to analyze and design various interactions between the user and the system. Okay, what are those various operations that user will going to make with the system? All these interactions between the user and the system we will be going to design in the form of a diagram. We can also use these tools of transition diagrams and sequence diagram to demonstrate the dynamic behavior between the user and the system, okay, where the information was getting interchanged between the user and the system dynamically. Okay, that we can represent using this transition diagram or sequence diagram. Now we will see the third part of object modeling technique, and that part is functional model. Okay, so this functional model handles the process perspective of the model. In the functional model, the designer will be going to take care about the various activities, about the various functions and processes involved in the system. Now the next point is focuses on process, data flow diagrams and actors. Yes, in this functional model, the major focus will be on the how data will be flowing between one component to another component, how user is providing the data, and in response to that data, how system will providing the information to the user. Okay, and then we will be majorly concerned about the data flow diagrams and actors. So in this functional model, the major concern will be based on the interaction between the user and the system, the data flow between the user and the system. And next one is, yes, data flow diagrams shows the flow of data between different processes in a system. Yes, we use the concept of data flow diagram to understand how data is flowing between the system. and all these things will be take care using this functional model during the analysis and design of object-oriented system. Okay, now we will see the purpose of designing a model before the development according to Rumbaugh. Okay, so now here the first point is testing physical entities before building them. Yes, so the purpose of building a prototype or a model before the development gets started, so that we can test that prototype or we can test that model to reduce the further cost in the development process. Next one is communication with the customer. Yes, we should develop a prototype or initial model of the system so that we can communicate properly with the customer, so that we can show that model to the customer and take the feedback of the customer. If customer wants to make further changes in the system, then customer will again tell the requirements or change the requirements, and then we have to incorporate those requirements in the model. Okay, next one is visualization. It helps, this model will help the analyst or the designer or the development team to visualize the concept in a better manner. Okay. Next is reduction of complexity. As if we have a clear-cut picture about the system, how the system is going to look, what will be the functionalities of the system at the very initial stages itself, then we can reduce many complexities during the development process. Okay, so these are some of the reasons or purpose behind developing a model according to Rumbaugh. So in this lesson we have discussed one of the object-oriented methodologies suggested by James Rumbaugh, and the name of this methodology is Rumbaugh Object Modeling Technique. Okay, I hope you guys have understood, and that's all for this lesson, and thanks for watching.